Red Bull led the Miami Grand Prix, lost the lead without a fight, and finished 5th while their biggest rivals pulled away, and now Verstappen has admitted something that could explain everything. Because this isn't just a bad result. From leading the race, to ending up over 40 seconds behind the winner, that's not strategy, that's a warning. And here's the part that changes everything. Verstappen didn't blame one moment. He revealed that even when Red Bull gets everything right at the start, the car simply isn't fast enough to stay there. Which means the real problem isn't what happened in Miami. It's what's going to keep happening next. At the start, everything looked exactly how Red Bull needed it to look. Clean launch. Strong traction. Perfect positioning into turn 1. While others were reacting, Verstappen was already acting. He saw the gap, committed instantly, and took the lead before the race had even settled. For a moment, it felt familiar. This is how Red Bull wins. Get ahead early. Control the pace. Force everyone else to react. And in those first laps, that script was playing out almost perfectly. But here's where the first crack appeared. The gap didn't grow. Now that might sound small, but it isn't. Because when a car has true race-winning pace, the moment it gets clean air, it starts pulling away. A second becomes 2. 2 becomes 3. Pressure disappears. That didn't happen. Instead, Norris stayed close. Piastri stayed within range. And behind them, Antonelli started closing in after recovering from the start chaos. So now the situation changes completely. Verstappen is leading. But he's not in control. And that's a dangerous place to be. Because leading without pace is like running at the front of a race you can't sustain. You're not dictating the race. You're delaying the moment it turns against you. And that moment was getting closer with every lap. Now add another layer. Fuel loads were still high. Tires were still holding on. The real test hadn't even started yet. Because in Formula 1, the first phase of the race hides weaknesses. The second phase exposes them. And Red Bull's weakness was still hidden, for now. But inside the car, Verstappen could already feel it. The balance wasn't perfect. The grip wasn't consistent. The car wasn't giving him that extra margin he needed to break away. And when a driver like Verstappen feels that early, it usually means something bigger is coming. So even while leading, he knew. This wasn't going to be a comfortable race. And that realization changes how you drive. Instead of attacking, you start managing. Instead of building a gap, you try to protect what you have. But protecting only works if the pace is close. And in Miami, it wasn't close enough. So what looked like control in the opening laps was actually the beginning of a slow collapse that nobody could see yet. And then, the race reached the point where everything gets exposed. Pit stops. Strategy. Execution under pressure. This is where races are actually decided, not at the start, but in the moment when teams have to commit. And Red Bull hesitated just enough. Not a huge mistake. Not something obvious. But enough. Because Mercedes didn't hesitate. Lap 27, they made the call. Antonelli boxed early, took fresh tires, and used that one lap of advantage to completely change the race. Now imagine this like a timing game. 2 drivers running almost the same speed. One switches to fresh tires first, suddenly gains nearly a second per lap, while the other stays out just 1 lap longer. That 1 lap is everything. And that's exactly what happened. By the time Red Bull reacted, the opportunity was gone. Antonelli was ahead. Clean air. Fresh tires. Control. And Verstappen was suddenly behind. But here's where the real problem shows itself. Normally, this is where Verstappen fights back. We've seen it before. He loses position, then hunts the leader down, lap after lap, until he's back in the fight. That didn't happen. Not this time. Because the moment he dropped behind, the gap didn't shrink. It grew. First Antonelli pulled away. Then Norris stayed comfortably ahead. Then Piastri joined the fight in front. And Verstappen wasn't attacking anymore. He was defending. Now think about how unusual that is. A driver who just led the race, now unable to even challenge for the podium. That's not about one pit stop. That's about what happens after the pit stop. It's about race pace. And Red Bull didn't have it. This is the phase where tire management matters most. Where small differences in car performance turn into big gaps. And Red Bull started losing time every single lap. Not dramatically, but consistently. Like a slow leak you can't stop. And that's the worst kind of problem. Because there's no single moment to fix. No obvious error to correct. Just a car that, over distance, can't match the others. And Verstappen felt it. You could hear it in the way he drove, in how he managed the car, in how the gap evolved. He wasn't making mistakes. He was reaching the limit of what the car could do. And once you reach that limit, there's nothing left. So the race that started with control turned into damage limitation. And by the final phase, the question wasn't whether he could win. It was how far he would fall. And this is where Verstappen finally said it, without hiding anything. After the race, no excuses, no deflection, no blaming strategy, just one line that explains everything. Finishing fifth, after leading the race, tells you exactly where the car is. Now stop there for a second. Because that's not frustration. That's diagnosis. He's not talking about Miami. He's talking about the car's real level. And here's what that means. Red Bull didn't lose this race because of one wrong call. They lost it because, over a full race distance, they are not competitive enough to stay at the front. That's the difference. Anyone can lead a race for a few laps. Very few can control it from start to finish. And right now, Red Bull can't. But here's where it gets even more serious. Verstappen admitted the car is better than at the start of the season. So they are improving. But then comes the real problem. It's still not enough to win. That means something critical is happening. They are moving forward, but everyone else is moving faster. And in Formula 1, that's how you lose a championship without realizing it at first. Because the gap doesn't appear suddenly. It grows slowly, race by race, lap by lap, until one day, you're no longer fighting for wins. You're fighting to stay relevant. Now look at Miami again, but from that perspective. Mercedes didn't just win. They controlled the key moment and had the pace to back it up. McLaren didn't just get lucky. They had consistent speed across the entire race. Red Bull? They had a strong start, and nothing to sustain it. And that's exactly what Verstappen revealed. The problem isn't how the race begins. It's how it evolves. Because once tires degrade, once strategy plays out, once the race stretches over time, the RB car drops into the same group as everyone else. And sometimes, behind them. Now think about what that creates going forward. Every rival now knows Red Bull's pattern. Stay close early. Wait for the race to develop. Attack when the pace difference appears. That's not theory anymore. Miami proved it. And that makes Red Bull predictable. Which is one of the worst positions a top team can be in. Because unpredictability creates fear. Predictability creates opportunity. Now the focus shifts to what comes next. Red Bull is already talking about upgrades. More performance. Bigger steps. Future races. But here's the risk they're facing. If those upgrades don't deliver a significant jump, not a small improvement, not a gradual gain, a real step forward, then this pattern won't change. They'll keep starting strong. They'll keep fading later. And they'll keep finishing outside the positions they used to dominate. And that leads to the real question behind everything Verstappen said. Is this just a temporary phase while they develop the car? Or is this the moment where Red Bull's dominance actually ends? Because if the car's limit is already visible, then no strategy, no start, no driver performance can hide it for long. And this is where the consequences stop being theoretical and start becoming very real for Red Bull's future. Because Miami didn't just show a weakness. It showed a limit that affects everything. Strategy, tire life, race pace, even how aggressive Verstappen can be behind the wheel. Now imagine going into the next race with that knowledge. You know you can start strong. You know you can fight for track position early. But deep down, you also know that over a full race distance, the car may not hold that level. That changes everything. Because instead of racing to win, you start racing to survive. And that's a completely different mindset. You take fewer risks. You defend more. You manage instead of attack. And in Formula 1, that shift is subtle, but devastating. Because while you're managing, your rivals are pushing. Now connect that to the championship. Antonelli is building a serious lead. Race after race, consistent, controlled, growing stronger under pressure. McLaren is improving fast, already capable of fighting at the front. Mercedes is executing with precision. And Red Bull? They're trying to catch up. That's the reversal. And reversals like this don't happen by accident. They happen when a car hits a development ceiling, or when others break through faster. And right now, it feels like both. Now here's where the internal pressure starts to rise. Because Verstappen is not a driver who accepts limitations quietly. When he says the car isn't enough, that message isn't just for the media. It's for the engineers, the factory, the people responsible for finding performance. And in Formula 1, those messages carry weight. Because if the driver feels the limit, it means the limit is real. Now add another layer. Red Bull is already planning upgrades. New parts. New developments. Future races where they expect to improve. But development takes time. And championships don't wait. Every race where the gap remains is a race where points are lost. And points lost early in the season are the hardest to recover later. So now the situation becomes urgent. Not desperate, but close. Because if the next upgrade works, this story changes completely. Red Bull comes back, the fight resets, the balance shifts again,